Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about intimidation. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, have you ever been intimidated by a project when you started working on it? Oh yes, more than once. I was shitting my pants on my first job, that's much I can tell you. I was scared shitless of that thing. I was scared. I was even scared shitless at projects that we were doing in school because I have this. I suspect that it is my greatest anxiety and probably my greatest. I'm not gonna say greatest fear because sharks, they're fucking hilariously dangerous and scary and so forth. But I would say that I'm pretty sure that I'm very anxious when it comes to failing at something that I care about. So maybe a lot of people can relate to this. Like, for example, if you sort of accept about yourself that you're bad at mathematics or you're bad at music or singing, or so, like you have these things where you sort of go, yeah, I'm so bad at this, and there's no expectation on me to being good. That I mean, I'm fine with just admitting that I'm bad at this thing, right? But then you have things that you either want to be good at, or things that are a little bit more, it's sort of you should be good at that. Like I love to ask people, like, as an adult, what is your grade? Like, what would be like something that is completely taboo for you in society, and things such as not people are anxious about not being able to swim or not being able to ride a bicycle, like when you're an adult. And of course, not being able to read or things like that. These are things that if you could not do them in, say, like the modern world and so forth, a lot of people might feel extreme anxiety over that because it's a skill that you feel like you should have mastered by now. It's almost a little bit embarrassing, right? I have the exact same thing for anything that I put my mind to. Like it's super scary to me to have something I really want to be good at, like say software development, and then just turn out that I'm suck at it or I'm not able to do it or stuff like that. And so that fear I had heaps and buckets and loads of during my first few years. I think even up to like at least a 5 year mark. Like to like it was to a point where I had anxieties and things like that, and it didn't help, when you have a few failures here and there, which makes you feel even worse about the thing. But I stuck with it because I love the thing, because there are peaks and valleys. Some days were good, some days were super bad, etc., etc. And now everything is sort of mildly good, I would say, on average. But then again, it's that I think you're gonna see as well, like those like the line, like the graph of how peaks and valleys, it sort of starts evening out and becoming sort of like a straight line the more you know and the more senior you become. Because as I like to say, like once you have mastered something, it's no longer scary, and that's just because you've been exposed to it so many times that you no longer really, it doesn't affect you. It's the same idea with anything you're going to start at. Like do it for long enough and it's going to just become something you do. You don't even really think about it. And that's where I am now. But in the first few times, absolutely. And other times I've been intimidated by the project has been, and if we not take like the obvious thing, which is you are a junior software developer, I think my first job was just intimidating because it was the first job. My second job was, of course, intimidating because it was the second job, but it was also intimidating because I was the only front end developer on probably the largest front end code base I've ever worked on. The code base had existed for over 30 years, and the range of technologies where I can't even remember. I need to go and look it up. I don't know because for those of you who are like ancient, there was a time where jQuery just came out. And there was another library, and I can't remember what it was called, but it basically tried to compete. This was like before, for you youngsters out there who think that everything is about React, Angular, and Vue, or so forth, or Svelte, or so forth. Like we have the SPA wars. We used to have the let's find something that is not the native APIs during the browser war era, where jQuery emerged and became the victor of the internet and basically took over. But there was another champion there, which my company had. They had both jQuery and that thing. So they sort of started in they were like making the whole system in like the old school PHP with vanilla JavaScript and script type. We didn't even have bundlers in those days or anything like that. And TypeScript, that was nothing like that, right? And so that's the code. That's the one part of the code base, and the part was, well, React 0.18, if I remember correctly, before we had classes, functional components. Like it was in the create class function days where everything was a mixin and stuff like that. That's when I started, and that was super scary, because basically I was the only guy there who did front end, and the application was humongous, and like no tests, no nothing. It was a big mishmash of like, I think I still remember to this day that we had a story to standardize the tooltip component on that thing. During that story, I found not one, not two, but 11 duplicate implementations of the same tooltip total in the code base. They had duplicated that component 11 times. That's how legacy we were talking about. And basically that, I mean, it was horrible, like ridiculously horrible. I was lucky though, because I only needed to survive there for, I think I was there for about 6 months or like half a year or something like that before the guy I consider to be probably one of the most important people in my career in terms of career, like he's a very good friend of mine as well. He used to be my manager in my last job. He started, and he's ridiculously talented, like at a level where it's I can't even mention it. So like, thanks to him and a few of the other people who were working there, another guy was working there who was probably, as I've said before, he's probably everything I would like to be when I'm his age in terms of like professionalism and stuff like that. Or I at least in those days, I looked up to these guys like enormously, and now I still consider them to be very good friends of mine. So they sort of saved me. But after that, when I took my third job, I had a similar sort of situation, because I had never worked in that company. They were using Scala, and I had never worked with Scala before. But I thought, hey, why not try it? Because I've had like worked with a bunch of other languages, and so they were more into the functional programming space in that company, and that was also like an overwhelming situation to be in the start of things, because again, lots of code, and Scala is, I don't care who tells me, I'm very sorry here, I cannot be convinced otherwise. Scala is not a beginner friendly language. Holy shit, no. There's a million ways of doing everything, and I was so out of my depth. And like, you want to find, like, you guys, we who have the luxury of working in, say, JavaScript, Java, or like C# or something like that, those nice Stack Overflow answers. Well, let's just say that Scala does not have the same spread on the internet, at least what I could find. So many times it was like, it almost felt like being back in the school days, where I'm literally too dumb to Google and find an answer to my own problem, at least in Scala, because there was 100 ways of doing things and I couldn't figure it out. I finally did, and so like now I know enough Scala to like be able to work at a professional level, I would think. But I'm never doing that again if I have a choice. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, I have been intimidated by a project more than once. I've never been scared of taking on a challenge, because I'm a bit of a masochist in that regard. Like, I enjoy really tricky problems. Like, it gets me excited when I get to when someone tells me build this thing, and I know this is really complicated. Like, this is something that's going to be really, really tricky. I still remember it was some of the funnest activities I've ever done, and it was at the company where I did Scala. We had me and a team. Our job was to improve the accuracy of an algorithm which was like core business to the company, that did categorization of payments and things like that to try to figure out if something was a subscription or not. And that we did. I think we spent a whole week on just a few days at the very least on just in just a meeting room to try to figure out, okay, so its accuracy was too low. And then we looked at all the various types of data sets we were getting from different payment systems and stuff like that, and we tried to figure out, okay, so how can we create a pattern here that which increases the likelihood that this identifies subscription-based payments and stuff like that in an accurate fashion. It was horrendously difficult to do. I think we did pretty well, and it was super, super fun. But when it comes to being intimidated, it has always been the same thing. In the early days, I was scared shitless of absolutely everything I did because I didn't really know how to do anything, and I was scared, of course, to fail as a software developer. These days, I haven't felt real anxiety for anything that I do in years, honestly, apart from like if we're talking just code related things and so forth, because at this point I've done so much and I have a profile where I feel like I might not be an expert at everything, but I can swing most projects as long as it's web related. It has to be something very extraordinary. Like things that makes me a little bit nervous is if it's the closest thing I can think of is if you have a memory leak or something like that, or a race condition, or like something really tricky in production, which is I know that it only happens every full moon, and if like there's a certain network traffic or some shit like that is super super scary to try to like debug something like that. That's always scary, I find. But most things, no, not the projects themselves, because even the most horrendously projects, and maybe that is a little bit due to the fact that I got introduced to some really really horrendous stuff. I even to this day say that I probably became a better front-end developer because my second job had such a horrible code base and I had to figure out how to fix it basically. And due to the learnings I had in that environment, I can now sort of figure out, okay, this is a no-go, never do that again, and these are things you should be investing in. So yes, definitely intimidated by some projects and so forth, but at the overall, if it's a complicated problem to deal with and it's more like brainy stuff, I love it. If it's something like, as I said, a production issue or something like that where like everything's on fire and so forth, today I can sort of deal with it better at the very least. But a few years ago I was shitting my pants for sure. Have a great day.